Welcome back. The number of people who have recovered from the novel coronavirus disease in the Philippines reaches a record high. On Wednesday, the Philippine Health Department announced 58 new recoveries, bringing the nationwide total to 353. Meanwhile, 14 new fatalities were confirmed, raising the death toll to 349. This is the first time since March 10 that the total number of recoveries was higher than the total number of deaths.
Kasama po sa mga naitalang nakarecover ay ang mga pasyenteng nakakonfine at mga pasyenteng mga positive, mild, and asymptomatic na nakarecover mula sa kanilang self-isolation o home quarantine.
230 new COVID-19 patients were also reported, bringing the total number of cases in the country to 5,453. That's the highest in Southeast Asia. The Philippine government eyes the partial lifting of the enhanced community quarantine in some parts of the country after April 30. But Interior Local Government Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya clarifies that it will still depend on how the local government units will perform in the next 14 days. Among the factors authorities will watch out for include the success of each area's mass testing efforts and isolation of COVID-19 patients.
If we are able to make that happen, the results would show next week. And if the results show that we have flattened the curve, then we can talk about partial lifting. I think some areas of Mindanao, Visayas, maybe even the Bicol region, regions 1 and 2 are already potential places where we can do the lifting.
Filipinos can expect to get a better picture of the Philippines' COVID-19 response when the group tasked to study the data presents its findings by April 20. That group is currently looking at 5 aspects of the current lockdown, including social, economic, and health aspects. Based on those, the Interagency Task Force on the Pandemic Response will present recommendations to President Duterte on how to move forward past April 30.
Yung sa flattening of the curve, that's one part of one aspect out of 5. At the very least, pag present nila niyan, makikita na natin talaga yung running total or the running figures as of Monday, taking into consideration all of these 5 parameters. And then that will guide us all the way for next week.
Overseas, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warns Americans they should be prepared for a second wave of the coronavirus in winter. The nation's health protection agency says it will be aggressive when it wages another battle with the disease.
Individuals who develop antibody will have protective immunity. The question is how long, but this is going to be the critical question that we will answer between now and next year, when it's very likely that we're going to have another wrestling match with this virus as it comes back.
Let's now check on the situation of Filipino workers in the United States. We have on the line Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Babes Romualdez. Good afternoon, Ambassador, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, good afternoon.
Ambassador, data from the Philippine Embassy in Washington is saying that there are 3.4 million Filipinos in the U.S. May we know how many of our kababayans have been infected, how many have also expired from the disease, and what assistance can we give them?
Well, so far we've been able to track about 125 confirmed cases of COVID-19 among Filipinos here in the United States, and about 47 of whom have died from the disease. These figures are actually likely represent an undercount, or because of the patient privacy rights being practiced here in the United States. They're very protective over these things, and this information is only passed on to us by Filipino groups that have communicate that to us here in the embassy. But actually, let me just say that there are actually 4.3 million individuals of Filipino origin here in the United States, much more than the 3.4 that you mentioned. But we here at the embassy and our consulates general all over the United States, we have 7 of them all over, are ready to extend whatever assistance we can give to the Filipino nationals who find themselves in distress due to this pandemic.
Ambassador, although the ban has been lifted for healthcare workers to leave the country, President Duterte has been very vocal about his criticisms of the U.S. employing our health workers. How do you think this can affect U.S. and Philippines relations in the time of COVID?
Well, first of all, let me clarify that. I think, well, the president actually is right that the United States has been, well, not really recruiting, but there are many those that have applied to go to the United States as health workers. But I clarified with the U.S. Embassy in Manila, but also here in the State Department. It is actually those that have already signed a contract before this pandemic took place. So these are the people that are being asked by the U.S. Embassy to go now to the embassy because obviously they need them here. And of course, the president was also right in appealing to many of our health workers that definitely we need them now there in the Philippines more than anything else. So it's really a question of their decision to go. But I think it was also clarified by the presidential counsel, Salvador Panelo, that he agreed with Secretary Locsin that everyone has a right to travel and has the right to go, especially if they have a contract. So it's really more of a moral issue on the part of many of our health workers if they would like to stay in the Philippines to help out. But only those that have a contract that they've signed and have already have not yet actually applied for a visa, they are now processing it if they are willing to go to the United States, because they really do need a lot of health workers here, and also for the fact that Filipino health workers are the most appreciated of any national here in the United States now. I can certainly say that with pride that they are really very much appreciated in this country.
All right, Ambassador, the U.S. government has recently released an economic package that covers even the foreign workers. What can our Filipino workers expect from that?
Well, there are certain categories of Filipino workers in the United States that may be eligible for this economic impact payment with paid leaves and federal pandemic unemployment compensation. But these are all subject to the provisions of the CARES Act of the United States and other relevant federal and state guidelines. We advise many of our Filipino kababayans here in the United States to check on the online portal of the IRS, or the Internal Revenue Service, to check their eligibility and or process their claims.
Ambassador,
so that's what we advise them.
All right.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier, Ambassador Babes, that the Filipino health workers are actually being appreciated in the U.S. right now. We've seen a recent video of a U.S. news presenter thanking his Filipino nurse. It went viral. So I would like to know, how are the status of our health workers who are at the front lines of the U.S. battle?
Well, like I said, they're very much appreciated, but of course they're also unfortunately being in the front line. Many of them, I understand, also contracted the infection. So, but they're being taken care of by the hospitals where they're working on. And I think that there is already a potential vaccine that is being researched on a fast-track basis, and we were just informed actually that there's a possibility that it may be. There's still a big maybe. It might be available by the end of this year, but this will only be made available first to the health workers and the frontliners before the public will be able to take advantage of this vaccine that they are not too far away from. You know, that the United States, of course, is very advanced in the research and the development of this with many of the pharmaceutical companies and scientists that they have here. So there is a big chance that the vaccine can be found hopefully before the end of this year. And we're hopeful for that one, because I pray very hard for the Philippines, really, because obviously the only way that this thing will be solved is when the vaccine takes place. And I know that we're very vulnerable. We have 110 million people, and 13 million people actually live in Metro Manila. So I really hope that the vaccine will soon
All right,
be found. You know.
We're sharing the same sentiments, Ambassador Babes Romualdez. Thank you so much for your time, sir, and sending you prayers of safety from the Philippines. Thank you and good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much also.
Finance officials from the group of 20 major economies agreed to suspend debt service payments for the world's poorest countries. That will help them deal with the coronavirus pandemic. According to the finance minister of France, some 76 countries would be eligible to have payments worth an overall $20 billion suspended by the private and official creditors. The payment suspensions will take effect on May 1st until the end of this year. The Philippine Labor Department now lacks funds for cash aid to more than 1 million workers who have suffered income loss during the lockdown in Luzon. That's according to Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III, who says some 1.5 million workers have applied for the 5,000 peso aid from the agency. Only 435,000 have so far been approved, and the department will already be shelling out at least 2 billion pesos for them. The cash aid will be released this week.
Nararamdaman ko rin yung impatient ng ating mga kababayan. Kasi alam natin gutom sila eh. Hindi natin masisisi sila pag nagre-reklamo sila. Government is doing everything it can do to give them the assistance they deserve. Alam namin yan, they deserve it. Obligasyon namin ibigay sa kanila yan. Kaya lang konting pasensya lang po. Basta pararatingin namin yan.
Secretary Bello says the remaining 1 million workers with pending applications will now be assisted instead by the Finance Department, which recently unveiled a 51 billion peso wage subsidy program for workers and small businesses. Bello adds the Labor Department will no longer accept cash aid applications. More Filipino millennials are spreading much-needed positivity on social media as the country battles COVID-19. Video platforms like TikTok see a spike in engagements from Filipino users, including celebrities who come up with creative content aimed at entertaining or informing their followers. TikTok Philippines' Content Operations Manager Emmanuel John Castro says most of the trending videos promote COVID-19 related information.
We promote videos that, again, spread positivity. We also try to promote information, the right kind of information out there, because TikTok has been like a big platform for users of different ages, but also it's a great platform for people from the Generation Z and millennials, of course. So with the live streams that has been going on TikTok, especially with WHO and DOH, this is our way of letting these organizations reach these demographics.
And those are the latest news at this hour. I am Rica Lazo. Keep it here on ANC for ABS-CBN's special coverage of the enhanced community quarantine in Luzon.